to invest in strategic areas.
Optimism prevails as Africa Drive for Democracy conference ends.
We want those in office now at the continental level to also benefit from the experience.
Good evening, I am Teddy Mparanyanga. You can also follow us live via YouTube channel TBConline and also get all the latest news through our Instagram, Facebook and Twitter pages at TBConline. President Dr. Samia Suluhu Hassan urges investors from Hungary to invest in the country in various sectors such as energy, minerals, tourism for the economic betterment for both countries. Malia Cheto has more details.
The president of Hungary, Katalin Novak, arrives at the State House in Dar es Salaam and is welcomed by her host, President Dr. Samia Suluhu Hassan. The two heads of state witnesses the signing of memorandum of understanding that focuses on improving education, economy and tourism sectors between the two countries, insisting the bilateral relations in trade and investment target to promote business between two countries.
This just signed agreement is coming with new approach, of which Hungarians or students from Hungary will as well benefit on the scholarships coming to Tanzania and studying in our universities.
Only to learn and study in the other country, but also to get to know the people, to get to know the language, and by that, to give them the chance to better.
Also, the two presidents insisted on bilateral relationship, especially in economic investment and tourism.
Would like to organize a business forum in Hungary linked to the visit of Madam President and bringing together the stakeholders from the business sector of both countries so that we can find the areas of improvement or the areas of investment for the investors from both countries.
We discussed about the possibility of encouraging investors from Hungary to invest in strategic areas such as renewable energy, tourism, ICT and service delivery, mining, fisheries, manufacturing and finance. I wish to reiterate my government's commitment to render the necessary facilitation and assistance to the Hungarian business community wishing to invest in Tanzania.
Gender equality and women empowerment was at the center of discussions, and both parties agreed to work together on the areas.
On gender equality and women empowerment, as I explained in our meeting, that the issue of gender equality and women empowerment is one of our top priority in my government. And I wish to thank Your Excellency, Madam Katalin, as I'm pleased to know that we share the same aspirations towards the advancement of these crucial aspects of women empowerment.
To speak to each other as women leaders, as women presidents of our countries. And that gives us the chance and gives us also the responsibility. Gives us the responsibility to encourage young girls and women in our respective countries not to give up on their hopes and their dreams, and not to give up on motherhood either. We are both not only women leaders, but mothers. And we both agree that motherhood is a very important part of our lives.
The visiting of Hungary President Katalin Novak in Tanzania will establish the new relationship between two countries, especially in education system, tourism, and investment. Reporting from State House, Dar es Salaam, Malio Cheto, TBC News.
Thank you, Malio Cheto. And on to the next news. The former President Dr. Jakaya Kikwete says African countries have made great strides in ensuring democracy, even though there are still challenges in some countries. Dr. Kikwete, together with other African leaders, were briefing journalists in Arusha regarding the second day of the conference on the state of democracy in Africa, insisting conflicts in some countries is an obstacle to the implementation of democracy. Here's the report prepared by Sechelela Kongola read by Apasia Ringo.
Is the second day of Elders Retreat, which is part of the Africa Drive for Democracy Week, comprising of former heads of state, scholars, leaders of political parties, professional associations, and active citizens. The former president of Sierra Leone, Ernest Bai, who is also the chairman of the meeting this year, says democracy in some African countries is still a process.
We are all proud of what we have been doing as Africans. This is not to say we have not had challenges. We are having challenges. We will continue to have challenges. Democracy is not a destination. It is a journey. We have to continue with the process. We move on and on and on. And that is why we came to this retreat, and we have had a spirited engagement with experts.
The former president of Mozambique, Joaquim Chissano, urges more young people to be trained about democracy in order to bring about the desired change.
There's a process. And sometimes we forget about the gains in democracy. As he said, prior to the colonialism, and as he said in his tribe, there are some sorts of democracy there, which we are not studying, we are not reflecting about. So we tend to forget about the progress achieved.
On his part, the former president of Tanzania, Dr. Jakaya Kikwete, insists that even though great strides have been made on the area, there are still some challenges to be worked on in some of the countries.
So what we are simply doing is we want those in office now at the continental level to also benefit from the experience of those who have been in those offices and they have left office. There are things that they may need advice, yes. But also when we sit from outside, we say, there are things that we can say which those who are in offices now cannot. We have that liberty, and those in office cannot. So this is simply the benefit of those of us who are retired, to be able to talk to our peers that, hey, this is not right. Please, you could do this.
Furthermore, Dr. Kikwete adds that the issue of women being given positions in Africa also needs to be reviewed.
Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Finance, Dr. Natu Mwamba, says there must be a concerted effort between the international community and the African continent to deal with their challenges arising from the effects of COVID-19, climate change, and armed conflicts that threaten the economic and social well-being of various countries and hinder the pace of the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. She was addressing members of the High Political Forum of the United Nations in New York, in U.S., on behalf of the Africa Union as Tanzania chairs the Union for the year 2023. Here are more details.
Dr. Mwamba says that effects of COVID-19, climate change, and armed conflicts are major challenges that have been obstacles in implementing the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals and has pushed many people into poverty, calls for effective and immediate measures to be taken to deal with the situation, insisting that the African continent is blessed with many natural resources like sun, wind, water, and geothermal energy.
Our continent is endowed with an abundance of sun, wind, hydro, and geothermal resources. According to the Africa Renewable Energy Initiative, our renewable energy potential outnumbers currently energy demands over several times over. The economic and environmental benefits of embracing renewable energy and plainly evident with solar power alone, capable of providing Africa with 10 terawatts of electrical producing capability.
Regarding Tanzania, Dr. Mwamba says the government has been striving hard to ensure that the Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, are successfully achieved by the year 2030.
As a government, we are resolute in taking actions that optimize both domestic and external resources to effectively support the realization of SDGs. To achieve the SDG targets, the government of Tanzania will prioritize investments in the social well-being, skills, and capabilities of its citizens, particularly focusing on youth, and remaining steadfast in our dedication to advancing the rights of women and girls and promote inclusive and meaningful participation to all groups of people, including those most at risk.
Dr. Mwamba emphasizes that the government properly recognizes the important role of digital technology and innovation in promoting economic growth and ultimately achieving the expected results of the SDGs.
Moving on to the next news, the British government has given $27 million, equivalent to 60 billion shillings, to the C40 Cities Institute, which worked with 13 cities around the world, including Dar es Salaam, for fighting climate change. Speaking on the workshop to combat climate change held in Dar es Salaam, the acting director of the Dar es Salaam City Council, Tabu Shahibu, says the city focuses more on plans and actions to save the environment as climate change affects everyone.
Tunachokiona sasa hivi ni kuweka vitendo zaidi.
What we are seeing right now is the need to put more units in place because we have discussed many things and many plans have been put in place. Even the British ambassador in Tanzania has seen that we should focus more on actions for what we have discussed, and together it is possible. We also noticed that we must do all this in joint cooperation, and there is an opportunity for someone who can design a project that can help these efforts to deal with climate change. What we are doing is continuing to educate that if we produce waste, we should not mix it, because when other waste rots, it turns into fertilizer. But there also needs to be technology.
On the other hand, Elizabeth Mwangi, who is one of the organizers of the workshop from the C40 Cities Institute, says the workshop will coordinate ideas from different cities to come up with better ideas to combat climate change.
Itakuwa muhimu kwa majiji It will be important for cities to meet and discuss issues related to climate change, energy, and waste. And out of that, we will get answers to various issues and projects carried out by cities so that other cities can learn from East Africa.
C40 ni umoja wa majiji 100 duniani.
C40 is a union of 100 cities in the world. The City Council of Dar es Salaam is a member of that union. And for a very long time, we have been cooperating together to ensure that these cities work together to face the challenges of climate change and also use the opportunities that arise from those challenges to see how we can develop Dar es Salaam City.
The program also aims at designing cold rooms powered by solar energy in the markets to preserve vegetables and reduce waste, but also convert the other waste products into fertilizers or biogas for home use. The Director of Investment Promotion from Tanzania Investment Center, John Mnali, says the center will continue to cooperate with investment stakeholders to ensure a conducive environment for business in the country. He made the affirmation during the meeting that brings together the European Union Business Group and the government to discuss how the group can benefit from one-stop investment facilitation center, which is coordinated by TIC.
TIC visits to their establishments in order to understand the projects and to understand the operations and the challenges that investors are facing. So also these services is included under the roles of the aftercare unit. So through the aftercare unit, we do organize such visits. Sometimes we have scheduled visits, and sometimes it is demand driven, sometimes. So some investors, they write to the executive director to request him to visit the project in order to see the operations and advise on how to tackle some of the challenges the companies are facing. So that services is also available under the Tanzania Investment Center.
On his part, the ambassador of the Netherlands to Tanzania, Wib de Boer, says that they will continue to cooperate with the government of Tanzania and other stakeholders to continue to expand economic cooperation, while the executive director of the European Union Business Group, Emma Orio, says that the facilitation center will bring the business community closer to the services.
We believe this is work in progress. You saw today 12 different institutions that have to be approached by an investor. under the coordination of TIC. And we think that this is working nicely. Of course, this is a festival of details that you need to get right. So you need constant work on it, but the approach and the openness of all the institutions is refreshing, I must say. So we believe very much that TIC and the institutions are on the right track to a much easier investment climate in Tanzania.
European Union Business Group represents more than 125 investors who have invested in Tanzania in various sectors of products and services. Moving on to the next news, some residents of Idegenda and Isanga villages located in Kilolo district in Iringa region have started to experience the benefits of using biogas as an alternative energy in their households, which also reduce the use of wood and charcoal. Speaking to TBC News, some of the residents say after being educated on the use of biogas, they have not only saved time but also have been able to reduce the damage to the environment. Here's a report by Irene Mwakalinga, read by Lulua Mohammed.
Biogas is the energy that comes from animal manure, and when it is collected and processed, can produce energy for cooking and generate electricity.
Kwanza unazuia watu kwenda kuokota kuni.
First, it prevents people from going to look for firewood in the reserve. Secondly, it makes women to save time from collecting firewood and spend most of their time doing her domestic activities.
Women are also delighted with the technology that is easy to use but has proved to have many benefits.
Hata nikipika sufuria kwenye jiko la biogas.
Even when I use a pot to cook in a biogas stove, it doesn't produce soot on it, and it saves more time in going to collect firewood in the forest. Also, I get more time to cook for my children as they go to school.
How many cows does one need to produce the biogas?
You don't have to have a lot of cows. One cow is enough because you cannot collect the waste in one day to fill the pit. Every day, as you clean the cow's hoof, you collect it and fill the waste pit.
The biogas technology creates employment as well.
I thought it was better to build a biogas system, but also for me to be a biogas technician.
The use of bioelectricity has been encouraged by Eastern Arc Mountains Conservation Endowment Fund in an effort to collaborate with the government to reduce the use of wood and charcoal energy to preserve the environment.
Wataalamu wetu wamekuwa mara zote wakiwatembelea wakulima.
Our experts have been always visiting farmers and breeders to provide them with education on how they can breed their livestock. We will make sure we provide training even within the groups that are outside the project and use various institutions in providing education to the society, especially in schools and religious institutions.
Moving on to the tourism sector. On the western side of Kilimanjaro lies one of the most spectacular plains, but also a wild range of wildlife, connecting 4 great national parks. Edumet is a wildlife management area which is under Tanzania Wildlife Management Authority, TAWA. These wildlife management areas are a collaboration of communities and authorities for managing wildlife outside national parks. Margaret Geddy has more.
The community that resides in the area is a pastoralist society known as a Maasai. This is one of the most famous tribes in the world for the way they are strongly bound in their culture and traditions. Maasai originates from the River Nile, and that is why they are called the Nilotes. Many years ago, this pastoralist society migrated from the Horn of Africa all the way to East Africa on the northern side of Tanzania. Many people from around the globe come to Tanzania to learn about this beautiful tribe, for their way of life is like no other, which fascinates the eyes of many. This tribe is well known to have been living together with wild animals without interfering with the wild creatures. Maasais are a great example of community wildlife conservation. The climate of Edumet area is semi-arid and arid, which is influenced by the temperatures of the prevailing winds, altitude, and volcanic activities. The eruption of Kilimanjaro about 350,000 years ago is what led to different habitat, topography, and soil formation. The prevailing wind that blows towards West Kilimanjaro brings a number of ashers that created a flat open plains of endemit. The area is a little bit rocky with most wonderful view of Mount Kilimanjaro on the eastern side and Mount Meru on the western side.
Thank you, Margaret Geddy. And now, before we wind up our local news tonight, let us now have a look on today's exchange rates according to the Bank of Tanzania, BOT. Don't miss TBC News every weekday to know all the latest in exchange rates. Time now for all the latest in international news. And here is international news compiled by Dorothy Mari, read by Lulua Mohammed.
President Cyril Ramaphosa of South Africa says striving for peace in the world is an ideal that the late former President Nelson Mandela stood for. In his weekly letter to the nation, Ramaphosa says on Madiba's birthday today, it's important to remember that he sought to see an end to conflicts everywhere and wanted a true international fellowship of humankind. In another development, President Ramaphosa has unveiled 2 statues in the former President Mandela's hometown, Mthatha, Eastern Cape, as part of Nelson Mandela Day. The 2 statues serve as a tribute to Madiba and form part of the commemoration of the 67 years he dedicated to the fight against apartheid. In November 2009, the United Nations General Assembly declared 18th July Nelson Mandela International Day, a day to recognize and salute the former South African president's contribution to the pursuit of peace and freedom. The paramilitary force fighting against the army in Sudan claims to have taken control of a town in South Darfur. Clashes between the Rapid Support Forces RSF and the army have forced several thousand families to flee the town of Kas. There are reports of RSF fighters looting or destroying government buildings and markets. Heavy fighting is continuing in the capital Khartoum and several other areas as regional and international mediation efforts continue to end the conflict. And Chadian leader General Mohamed Idris Deby has pardoned 110 more people sentenced to jail terms following deadly protests against the regime last October. Demonstrations against the extension of Deby's transitional rule broke out last October in the capital N'Djamena and several other towns. Deby was proclaimed head of state by the army in April 2021 after the death of his father, Idris Deby Itno, who was killed during anti-rebel operations. More than 600 young men were arrested in N'Djamena and then sent to a prison. A total of 436 people convicted of taking part in last October's protest have now been pardoned by Chadian authorities in less than 4 months.
That was international news. Sports news up next. In sports news, Tanzania international boxer Twaha Kasimu, also known as Twaha Kiduku, says that he is training hard, gearing up for an international fight against Asamale Wellam from South Africa, which will take place on July 29th in Mwanza. Speaking to TBC News in Dar es Salaam, Kiduku adds that he is ready for the fight and is sure he will defeat Wellam to retain the UBO Africa title belt.
The boxer I'm going to fight, I never watched his fighting style, but he's very strong. He never lost any fight in the last 6 games. 2 by KO and 4 by points. So it's going to be a difficult fight, but I'm ready.
Last fight, Twaha Kiduku defeated Lago Kiziria and won the UBO Africa title belt in the fight held in Morogoro last year. That is sports news, and now before we conclude the news bulletin, let's take a look at the weather forecast for the next 24 hours.
And this is 24 hours weather forecast from Tanzania Meteorological Authority. Average wind speed I expect over the most part of our country, except over Lake Victoria Basin. Wind expect to flow at the speed of 40 km per hour. For tonight, we expect future particle condition and average cooler condition over the most part of our country, except over Tanga, Unguja and Pemba Isas. I expect future particle condition, light rain shower over few areas, and the lowest minimum temperature expect to be 7 degrees Celsius over Mbeya regions. For tomorrow, we expect future particle condition, light rain shower over few areas over the entire coast, together with high ground of Arusha together with Kilimanjaro region. And the rest part of our country expect future particle condition and long sun periods. Let's have a look for the 4 days weather forecast for some part of our country, starting from the day after tomorrow. Thank you for watching us and have a good night.
And that marks the end of the news bulletin for tonight. Don't miss our next bulletin in Kiswahili at 11 p.m. I am Teddy Mparanyanga. Have a lovely, lovely night.
Angalia TBC1, ukweli na uhakika.
Hili ni jamvi tunalitandika.
Mwangaza tutakuangazia, kukuhabarisha na kukujuza mengi ya gizani.